Straight Shift with the Car Chick, the podcast that's all about cars, buying, selling, fixing, and driving, and sometimes pretty fast if you're the car chick. Now, here she is.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Straight Shift. Finally, I know, I apologize for being on hiatus for a little while, and I want to give a shout out to Penny in Wisconsin. We had a lovely car chat last week, and she very rightly so admonished me for not getting a dang podcast out in a long time. So I apologize. You guys deserve better. I will do better. On the exciting end, what I have been busy doing, other than buying cars for a lot of people across the country, I am currently undergoing a project to create an online car buying course because I cannot directly help everyone, and I wish I could, but there's only one of me, and I want to be able to empower so many people, especially right now with this horrible, difficult market. I want people to be able to still have the tools and the knowledge and the strategies and all the secrets that they need to be able to get themselves a deal on a car, or even to just find one right now. So I have hired a company that specializes in online instructional design. They're amazing. And I have been brainstorming content to them. This is one of the hardest things I've actually done. It reminded me of a couple of years ago when I wrote my book and just how incredibly difficult that is. I prefer talking, not writing. And so even though I didn't have to make it pretty, they'll make it pretty. I still had to get all the content out of my brain and from all the different sources, my podcasts, my blog articles, everything I've ever written, trying to consolidate that and putting it into lessons and really teaching what I know and how I do what I do. It's been really challenging, but I'm very grateful that I have hired this amazing company, and we are targeting to release this course in the last quarter of this year, so maybe hopefully October-ish. And we don't know what platform it'll be on yet. We're still in the process of building all the content, but I'm really excited about it. So it'll be something that I can use to help a lot more people, for people who may not be a good fit for my service, or I just don't have the bandwidth to work with them. And it will also become the core of another course that I will develop maybe next year or the following year to train other women to do what I do so that I can kind of replicate myself, whether they want to do it under my brand. Kind of like real estate agents often operate underneath a broker. I'm kind of looking at that model. Or if they want to build their own brand and be a competitor to me, I welcome that because it just means there will be more of us to help more people in the country buy cars. So I'm really excited about all this, but it has been taking a lot of my time and a lot of my energy. So again, I apologize for not getting more podcasts out. I will do better. I wanted to get today's out because between rising gas prices and concerns about climate change, I have been getting more and more calls from people who are considering buying an electric vehicle, or what I like to call an electrified vehicle. And over the next about 5 years, there are going to be dozens and dozens of new electrified vehicles coming out on the market from nearly every manufacturer. It's so exciting. And I'm going to go through lists of those vehicles in the next episode, part 3 of this Electrified Cars series. But today I want to talk about what is it like to actually own an electrified vehicle so that you can decide if it's really right for you or not. And what type of maintenance do they require? Are they cheaper? Are they more expensive than gas-powered vehicles? How do you plug the damn thing in again? We're going to talk about some of the considerations, both for you personally and kind of for us as a country, as a community, in a move towards electric vehicles. So let's start with some of the basics. We talked a little bit in the last episode about the technology behind what I call electrified vehicles. And right for this one, we're going to focus on the plug-in hybrids and the full electrics, things you actually have to plug in. And I want to review how that works, because that will lead into, it's a big factor in deciding whether or not you actually want to own one of these things. Literally You plug the car in. It comes with a charger, just like your cell phone, and you plug it in. It's a little bigger than a cell phone charger, but the concept is basically the same. And your plug-in hybrids and your hybrids, there are 3 different levels of charging. And again, I'm going to go through this pretty quickly because I went into it in more depth in the previous episode. But they all come with a 120 volt compatible, what's called a level 1 charger. It's basically a fancy extension cord that plugs into the car on one end and plugs into your normal home electrical outlet on the other end. Literally just like your cell phone. Cord's a little bit longer, but it makes it easy to recharge your car pretty much anywhere. Anywhere there is a normal 120 volt electrical outlet, you plug that bad boy in. It was actually really funny, and I'll have to post this picture to my social media, but I was doing a walk around my neighborhood a few weeks ago, and I saw a Tesla parked on the street in front of a house about 2 blocks from where I am, and this electrical cord running across the tree line and across the sidewalk and over the yard and up the stairs and onto the porch and plugged into the electrical outlet on the porch of this house. And I noticed that the plate was an out-of-state plate. So I was like, oh, so this is how you charge your electric car when you go and visit family for a long weekend. It was really hilarious. But that's literally how easy it is. You literally just plug it in. It just takes a long time to fully recharge an electric car on one of those level 1 chargers. It's kind of like filling a bucket with an eyedropper. So think about how long that's going to take. It's why it's sometimes called trickle charging. And it may take 30 hours to fully charge an EV battery on one of those level 1 chargers. But, overnight, and if you don't necessarily have to completely charge it, it can work in a pinch. It's not ideal for if this is your daily driver. It's great if you have a plug-in hybrid that has a smaller battery. It doesn't take nearly as long to charge, and a level 1 charger will likely be perfectly fine. It'll charge the battery overnight. You'll be fine. And if you have an electric vehicle, fully electric, you're only driving 30, 40 miles a day, you may still be able to get it fully charged overnight on one of these level 1 chargers. But if you have a full EV and you drive it a lot, then you're going to want to invest in a level 2 charger. And that can recharge a full EV in about 8 to 12 hours. So that's literally an overnight kind of charge. But that requires a charging station. You can't just plug it into the wall at home. It has to connect to the 240 volt. Now that's the type of plug that like your clothes dryer plugs into. So if you don't have one of those in your garage, you're going to have to call an electrician. Do not try to do this yourself. Call a licensed electrician and have them come install a 240 volt in your garage. Now, the chargers themselves, you can get through the dealership and the car manufacturers. Granted, you're going to pay more if you do through them, but literally you can get them at Amazon. You can get them on HomeDepot.com. A lot of different vendors sell them. You don't necessarily have to have the one that is branded to your particular type of vehicle, unless you have a Tesla, because Teslas are different. The plug is different. The charger is different. So if you have a Tesla, it's kind of like having an iPhone. You got to have the standard stuff that is made by the manufacturer. So if you're getting a Tesla, get the Tesla charging station. You have to get the Tesla, but you're still probably going to want to get an adapter in case you do need to plug it into a public station. Tesla's plugs are different. So it's like the difference between a lightning cable for your iPhone and a USB-C cable for any other type of smartphone. It's a little bit different. Proprietary. Elon Musk has to make his money. But it's still not a big deal. They do sell the adapters so that you can plug your Tesla into the charging station at your office or at your Whole Foods or at IKEA, wherever. It's not that big of a deal. And there are more and more of these public charging stations going up all over the country, especially in more urban areas. So you have more options. Finally, the level 3 charging is direct current. It's fast charging. And one of these bad boys can usually charge a full EV, a full Tesla, to about 80% in like 30 minutes. These are commercial stations. These are what we're going to start seeing at gas stations across the country. So you'll be able to take a road trip in your electric vehicle and you go and you stop at a rest stop or you stop at a truck stop, someplace for the Flying J's is one of my favorite places to stop, and go in and have lunch, go to the bathroom, get some more snacks, And in 30 minutes, you can almost fully recharge your car. There will be more and more of these going in. The $5 billion infrastructure bill that passed Congress last fall is going to implement 500,000 of these fast charging stations across the United States by 2030. So we still have, almost a decade to go, but the goal is to have a charging station for every 50 miles of US interstate, so that you can do road trips across the US in your EV. That's one of the biggest deterrents to electric vehicles in the US versus in Europe, where everything is much closer together. We just have a lot of wide open spaces. And sometimes it's hard to even find a gas station when you get out there in the middle of nowhere. You're driving across the country and you kind of got to time your refuels very carefully. We're going to be in the same boat with the electric vehicles, but more and more of this infrastructure is coming out. And we'll get into some of the challenges of that a little bit later, but we're working towards it. We're getting there, and there will be more options so that you can drive further in that electric vehicle without running out of electricity. But we're not quite there yet. So making sure you have the ability to easily charge your electric or plug-in hybrid vehicle at your home is really, really critical. And if you have a house with a garage, it's not a huge deal. But for people who live in condos or apartments, especially in big urban areas, you're in a parking deck, do you have a charging station? Can you put one in? Do they have one? You need to really investigate that before you commit to the decision of purchasing one of these vehicles. Make sure you have access to a good quality charging station that is appropriate for your vehicle, and that preferably you don't have to share it with any other people. All right, let's talk for a minute about maintenance. And I want to start by reviewing the regular maintenance that's required for gas-powered cars, because a lot of people don't do that enough. But it will help in your mind understand then what are the differences with electrified vehicles. So the biggest thing with gas-powered vehicles is you have oil, you have transmission fluid, you have coolant, you have all these different fluids that keep all the moving parts lubricated and cool. Remember, that's the point of fluids, most of your fluids in your car. It keeps it lubricated, but it also helps keep it cool because liquid conducts heat away from those components. So you have some similar things to that on electric vehicles, and it depends on the type of vehicle. But you also have suspension components. You got wheel bearings, you got ball joints. Those start to wear out. You've got consumables like tires and wipers and a normal battery, which starts your car and runs the radio and things like that. And some of those are the same with electric vehicles, and you're still going to have to do those type of maintenance items. I know I said I was going to talk mostly about the plug-in hybrids and electrics, but I want to mention some of the maintenance on a regular hybrid vehicle, like a Prius or a Camry hybrid or a RAV4 hybrid. I'm listing the Toyotas because Toyotas had the hybrids for the longest, and they're some of the best. And that's pretty much, maintenance on those is almost identical to regular cars because it still has a gasoline engine. Now, they may have a separate air filter for the hybrid battery that you got to change periodically. That's not really expensive. Most hybrids also have some sort of a separate cooling system for the hybrid components, and they require a special coolant containing a special reservoir. So this is why you have to take it to a mechanic who knows how to work on hybrid vehicles, that has that training, and they have the proper equipment to do it. But the biggest maintenance concern that most people have is like, oh my God, what happens when I have to replace that hybrid battery somewhere down the line? Because you know what? They ain't cheap. You're talking several $1,000s versus, a couple $100 for a good quality traditional battery. But remember that your hybrid cars come with a very long warranty for those hybrid batteries. Most of them, it's about 8-year, 80,000 miles at a minimum. Toyota recently extended their hybrid battery warranties, starting with the 2020 models, to 10 years or 150,000 miles. And some legislation in California is forcing the manufacturers to do that. So, if you're planning to keep your car for 200,000-300,000 miles, you're going to have to factor in eventually having to replace that hybrid battery. But, don't think of something that's going to have to be replaced, as often as, say, a timing belt or a lot of other maintenance on the car. But looking at the long term, it is something to factor in if you're the type of person that keeps vehicles a really long time. Plug-in hybrids are pretty much the same as hybrid vehicles because you have both an electric motor and a petrol motor that has all the same maintenance requirements as normal cars. But it depends on how you drive it. If you are driving primarily short distances and mostly using that electric motor and the gas engine doesn't work as much, it's not going to get as much wear and tear. The old adage of change the oil every 3 months or 3,000 miles doesn't really apply anymore. Engines today can go, 5,000, 7,500 miles on a normal good synthetic oil change, and they're perfectly fine. And oil does not go bad with time. That whole 3 months or 3,000 miles is to get you to go in and spend money with the mechanic. It's to help keep them in business. It's not because your car necessarily needs it. Now, it's good to have your car checked for other things on a regular basis. But, my mother has an '03 Corolla and she's retired and she drives, even in non-pandemic times, maybe 3,000 miles a year. And we put a synthetic oil in it. We change her oil about every 2 years. I just have to make sure I am checking the other things on it more frequently to make sure that the rest of the car is in good shape. But, oil change every 2 years. She's perfectly fine. The car doesn't mind at all. It's all good. So your plug-in hybrid, how often those two motors need maintenance? Because electric motors do not need the same kind of maintenance that a gas-powered engine does. So, it just depends on how much you use the gas part of the engine. Again, always read the owner's manual, read that maintenance schedule so that you can maintain your warranty. That's true no matter what kind of car you drive, but that'll give you a better idea of the type of maintenance you'll need for that plug-in hybrid. It's going to depend on how much you drive it and how you drive it. Now let's look at the pure EVs. This is where you can really save on some maintenance. They don't have things like oil. They don't have spark plugs. They don't have timing belts. So electric motors take less maintenance over time, but they do still require some regular maintenance. And this is more for the rest of the car. You still need to rotate those tires. That's really, really important. You still have to change things like the cabin air filters. There are still coolants that need to be changed. So there is still a regularly scheduled maintenance for pure electric vehicles. It's just not the same and not as extensive as on a petrol-powered car. However, that's regularly scheduled maintenance. Now we kind of got to look at repairs. That's a little bit of a different story. And electric vehicles are just newer in the marketplace. So some of them have some kinks that have not yet been worked out. They're still working on those things. So you could potentially encounter some repair costs that could be a little more than it would be for a regular gas-powered car. So I like picking on Teslas, not because they're bad cars, but because they are the highest profile brand of electric vehicles, and they are the ones that tend to have the longest range and are the most popular right now. And they do have some interesting repairs. A normal windshield. Let's just look at the windshield on these things. Let's say you're driving down the road in your Camry and you get hit by a rock chip and you got to replace the windshield. Assuming that you don't have insurance that covers the entire cost of that, it might be, a couple $100 or so to replace that windshield. No big deal. Now, the Tesla Model 3, which is the most affordable of all the Teslas, that's about a $1,500 windshield. And I know this because a client of mine recently had to replace one for that very reason. So a lot of the parts for these new electrified vehicles cost more money. Will that change over time as we get more and more electric vehicles? I think it absolutely will. But right now, some of those repair costs are going to be significantly higher. So just ask the guy that recently blew up his Tesla instead of paying the repair costs. You got to check this out on YouTube. It's kind of hilarious in a pathetic sort of way, but there was this guy in Finland who bought a 2013 Tesla Model 3. He bought it used. This was a couple of years ago now. And after driving it less than 1,000 miles, it started throwing a bunch of error codes and kind of doing that, Tesla robot thing. So he took it to an authorized Tesla repair facility, and it stayed for over a month while the technicians tried to figure out what the heck was wrong with it. They finally told him that he would have to replace the entire battery system Remember, there are hundreds of batteries at the low cost of $22,600 US. So, and of course it wasn't under warranty. So, he basically bought a lemon. And instead of paying 22 plus grand to replace all the batteries in the car and hopefully fix the problem, he decided to pack the pound with 66 pounds of dynamite and blow it sky high. Really epically stupid, dangerous. Do not do this at home. We condone this not at all. And I'm sure it was just a publicity stunt, since he did it in conjunction with a very popular YouTube channel. But it's an example of the potentially high repair costs of owning an electric vehicle when something goes wrong. But we don't recommend blowing it up. So if you don't have any problems with your electrical car, if it runs great, then yeah, it should be cheaper to maintain over time. But there could be unanticipated repair costs down the line that could cost you an arm and a leg. And the EVs on the market are still too new for the most part to really know what that's going to be and how prevalent those are going to be. But you can bet that Consumer Reports and other industry publications are going to be tracking that data very closely, and we'll be able to get information on that so that you can research that. Just like I researched the problems for normal cars, you can figure out, okay, is this model year of this electric car going to be good, or is it going to be a piece of junk? So it's going to be just as important to do the research on electric cars as it is to do any other type of car before you decide to purchase it. All right, let's take a break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about some more of the common concerns and issues of actually owning an EV. And then we're going to kind of talk about whether or not, is it really going to save you money? Because most of the people that I talk to, they're like, oh my God, gas prices are hideous. I want an electric vehicle. Well, we're going to do math, people. You know how I like to do math. So we're going to talk about some of that and see what really is the bottom line. So give me just a minute and I'll be right back after this. Do you hate car shopping? Do you worry about being taken advantage of or about finding the right car at a great price? Buying a car can be a frustrating and time-consuming experience. But what if you could get a great deal without having to do a ton of research, without having to haggle, and without the fear of buying a lemon? You can. As your personal car shopper, the Car Chick will help you pick the perfect car based on your unique lifestyle, budget, and personality. She'll handle all of the legwork and negotiating for you. All you have to do is sign the papers and take the keys. It's that easy. To learn how the Car Chick can save you time, money, and hassle on your next car purchase, give us a call at 704-248-8706. That's 704-248-8706. Or visit us on the web at thecarchick.com.
Where the rubber meets the road.
Nice to meet you. Love your asphalt.
Hey, nice treads.
It's Straight Shift with the Car Chick.
Welcome back to The Straight Shift. We are talking today about what it's really like to own an electric vehicle so that you can decide if owning an electric or a plug-in hybrid is the right choice for you. And we talked about the maintenance and how that actually can be a little bit lower, assuming you don't get into some expensive repairs. But there are some other more lifestyle issues around owning an EV that you might not know about and that you need to consider. And one of the big ones is that the published range of an electric vehicle, in other words, how many miles can you drive before you run out of electricity, is usually a lot less in reality than it is on paper. And that variance can be greater than, say, the variance between what they say the fuel economy is of a gas-powered car versus what you really get. The actual miles that you can drive before you run out of electricity is going to depend on a lot of things. How you drive, if you're doing a lot of, taking advantage of that amazingly wonderful flat torque curve and incredible acceleration of an electric vehicle. For example, the way I would drive, you are going to burn through that electricity a lot faster than if you drive it the way it's intended to be very fuel efficient, so to speak, and environmentally friendly. This is just why I don't drive these cars. But also using things like the radio, the nav system, the heater, if it's got butt warmers, the air conditioning, all of those things also use electricity. And you may be using those things faster than the regeneration technology can replace that electricity in the car. Another thing to consider is where you live. Cold temperatures do, in fact, affect electric vehicles a lot more. So if you live in the north where there's winter, I used to live in Wisconsin. There were some mornings when it was literally minus 30. I'm going to say that again, minus 30. You walk outside and your nose hairs freeze. There's a reason I moved south. If you live in Canada, any place where you have winter and you have sub-freezing temperatures, your battery is just not going to last as long. It just steals the range of the electric vehicles. And it depends on a lot of factors. If you're kind of in the normal winter range, do you have the heat on? Are you using the butt warmers? But according to AAA's studies, you can expect to lose about 12% on average of your range in colder weather. But it could drop by almost half if you're blasting the heater, if you're running the butt warmers, heated seats, I call them butt warmers. So you have to factor that in and just know that if you're using this electric vehicle to drive to work in the winter, you're not going to get as far. So make sure you have enough, assure that 50% of the published range is enough to get you to where you can then recharge the car again. If it's not, then an EV might not be the best choice for you, or you might want to invest in a longer range EV. Then on the other end, there's this whole risk of fire. Yep, fire. So EV batteries are made of highly flammable components, and battery fires are really fascinating. So if you're a little bit of a pyro, like a battery fire is this whole other animal. Get on YouTube and look at battery fires. They're really fascinating, but they're also rather terrifying because they can start at any time with little to no notice, and it does happen. Now, the manufacturers are constantly working on making the batteries for the hybrid and the electric vehicles better and safer, but you still get this condition called thermal runaway. I mean, that just sounds kind of science fiction-y, but it's a very real concern. It's a very real danger, and it's a lot harder to put out the fire from a battery than it is to put out, say, an engine fire. And part of it is because when the battery itself is on fire, it's not accessible to the fire suppressant, things like water and the other chemicals that they use to suppress fires because of where those batteries are located. They're hidden underneath the car. When a regular engine of a car catches fire, and I have been in a car that has caught fire. I have been in a car that we deliberately set on fire, but that was a racing condition. But putting that out is usually just a matter of dousing the engine compartment and you're good to go. It doesn't work that way for batteries. So interestingly enough, this is causing fire departments to have to develop new processes for putting out electric car battery fires and training all of their firefighters on how to do that. But there's also a higher chance of reignition if it doesn't cool sufficiently from the firefighting efforts, and that can lead to a longer lasting fire. I mean, it's really quite an interesting problem, but also a much more dangerous one. And you can get out there, you can Google it, you can see that this has happened. Does it happen as much as catching fire, spontaneous combustion of regular cars? No. You just see it more in the media because it's a little more interesting, a little more sensational, and people that hate electric cars love to find any excuse to say these things are bad. But it is a more dangerous and more difficult type of fire to control. So just be aware, could happen. Battery fires are always dangerous with the batteries. Usually results with the batteries overheating. But these things, are not necessarily a reason for you to just stay away completely from electric cars. I think the biggest thing you need to look at is, what is the bottom line? Why do you want an electric car? Are you trying to save money? Are you just freaking out like kind of we all are over the price of gas right now? In which case we need to do some math. So let's talk about bottom line, will an electric car really save you money? And I'm sorry, but once again, we arrive at my common answer. It depends. Don't you just love it when I say that? I mean, why can anything be just cut and dry? Sorry, it doesn't work that way. So, yes, electric cars are cheaper to, quote, fuel than gas-powered cars. How much cheaper depends on where you get your electricity, including what part of the country you live in and, where that electricity is sourced, whether you have solar panels on top of your house. I actually have a few clients in Southern California, and they have solar panels all over their roofs, which is really cool, so that a significant portion of their household electrical needs are met by that beautiful California sunshine. It just pours energy directly into their electric cars and, magically refuels them, so to speak. All right, it's a little more complicated than that, but you get my drift. They can fuel their cars dirt cheap. Like, kind of reminds me of how my cats refuel. They just find a sunbeam and lay in it and sleep for an hour, and then they're ready to just run around the house like crazed banshees bouncing off the walls because they're recharged. And then they go find another sunbeam and go back to sleep. So we really could learn a lot about energy systems from cats. They're very efficient in their use of renewable energy. Anyway, let's talk about other areas of the country, because not everybody lives in Southern California where you have solar panels on your house. A large portion of the country still gets their electricity by burning fuel and other fossil fuels. So let's just take a look at North Carolina for an example. I live in the Carolinas, and right now it costs about, at least according to Duke Energy, about 15 cents per kilowatt hour to charge an electric car. So, converting all of that into terms that the average person understands, depending on how many miles your specific electric vehicle gets on a single charge, that's going to translate to about $10 to refuel, so to speak, or fully recharge your car. Now, to compare to that, it costs at least $50 to fill one up with gas these days. And we have, a little bit cheaper, or at least average cost gas, cheaper. Let's just use the term less expensive than other parts of the country. We're sitting about $4.30 a gallon for regular right now. Maggie takes premium, so I'm up there around the $5 range. Thank goodness I don't go anywhere anymore. But it's still cheaper to operate an EV, to refuel, so to speak, that car than a gas-powered car, and by a good bit. But, yeah, you knew that was coming, right? You heard the but. You could see me making butt face. Electric cars are more expensive to buy up front, especially right now. Oh my goodness. So the average electric car costs about $19,000 more than the average gas-powered car. Now, that's looking across the industry and knowing that a lot of the EVs are in that luxury range. They're, Teslas, the new Rivian trucks. They tend to be on more of the luxury end of things versus the Nissan Leaf end of things. And there's such a variance, so these are averages, but that average is based on MSRP. It's not taking into account the price gouging that is still going on and getting worse, with dealers charging, in many cases, $20,000 over sticker for these electrified vehicles. Ooh, don't even get me started on how angry I am about that, but I'm not going to get on that soapbox today. But you do have to factor that in when you're thinking about an electric vehicle. And that's because they're so hard to get. I mean, everything's hard to get right now. Getting any type of new car can take you months, but the electrified ones are even worse. And so many of them are only offered in the California market, or maybe California and New York, or just specific areas of the country. And if you live in a different state, you can't get one. I mean, literally, the dealers are not allowed to sell it to you. So, in places like California, where you have the highest demand and you have apparently people with ridiculous amounts of money, and gas prices are, $8, $9 a gallon. I mean, I get why people are freaking out, but, that is being taken advantage of by the dealers that are putting these insane market adjustments, as if that makes it okay, on these cars. So that changes your business case real quick. If you do the math, it's going to take you a long time to recoup those costs. And even if you're charging your car from solar energy and it's practically free to operate it, $20,000, that's 20,000 over sticker. I mean, you could probably still come out better financially by just getting a small fuel efficient gas powered car right now. So really think hard about that, especially if you live in a place like California where they are price gouging like crazy. So even if they're not price gouging, let's just assume you can get one of these things at sticker. You got to factor in adding in the price of a charging station at home, because you probably really need to do level 2 charging if you have a fully electric vehicle, assuming you don't already have one. Doing all that math, it can take a good 15 years to truly start seeing that return on investment with an electric car. Granted, that business case does vary a lot, and it will change as time goes on. Hopefully we're going to start producing more cars, and that will change the market conditions, and hopefully that price gouging is going to go away. And hopefully the cost of the electricity itself is going to go down, as we develop and expand more renewable energy sources for producing that electricity in the first place. So that opens a whole nother can of worms. So let's just go ahead and open it and talk about, can the US electrical grid even handle electric cars? And this is one of the things you're going to see, kind of EV haters out there. There's a portion of the population that does not think electric cars are a good idea, and they really don't want us going there. And, a lot of those people do have financial connections to the fossil fuel industry, just saying. But it doesn't mean that some of the points are not valid concerns. And the answer is complicated as to whether or not the electric grid can handle this. There are some studies that do show that the whole grid would just outright collapse if all the cars in the US were suddenly electric. Okay, that's true, but that's not going to happen overnight. And it also assumes that all of those cars are all going to be recharging at exactly the same time, which again, that's never going to happen. People, yes, during the night, maybe at like 3 a.m., 4 a.m., you're going to see more electric cars from coast to coast plugged in, but they don't all get their electricity from the same sources. So it's not like we have one source of electricity that, provides electric power to every place in the United States. We have lots of different sources. Not necessarily enough, but we do have a lot of different sources. So it's more of managing the supply and demand of electricity for the areas that need them, which is why you do see areas of California, areas of New York, areas of Texas. Sometimes they do go into brownouts. They go into crises where there is not enough electricity for what's needed. And kind of like when we go into a drought with water, they go into an electricity drought and they have these brownouts, and, it wreaks incredible havoc. But, a lot of that is not about being able to produce enough electricity. I mean, we're pretty good at producing it. We don't always produce it in the greatest ways. But one of the bigger challenges is actually getting that electricity to the places that need it. It's about transmission lines. We have a big problem with our transmission grid being wholly insufficient. A lot of it's very old. It desperately needs to be replaced. It's getting decrepit. And it's just not enough because we haven't been able to expand those pipelines for electricity as quickly as certain areas like New York, like LA, like parts of Texas have grown in population, and therefore the demand for that electricity has increased much faster than we have been able to supply it. So literally, it's yet another supply chain problem. So we already desperately need to invest more money in that existing electrical grid, to expanding it, to getting better sources, getting off those fossil fuels, and then getting the power to where it's needed. And the strategy for that is going to be distributing it more. So instead of there being these smaller, set production plants where large amounts of electricity are produced and then trying to then get it there to all the places that it's needed, we're going to be using more of a distributed technology. So if you think about how the internet works, I'm going to try not to be a nerd here. But if we can generate electricity from, a more distributed area, we've got a lot of great farmlands that are being converted to solar farms. And so, you might, instead of getting your electricity from, we get it from the nuclear plant down here at Lake Wylie. And, that's great. And they can provide a lot of electricity to this area from nuclear power, which is cool. But, imagine getting it from, some farmer in Kansas and his electrical farm out there, where he grows, corn and sunshine right next door. We're going to start seeing more of that. And that's where a lot of the investment technology is going. So, we do absolutely have to invest and change the approach to our electric grid. But it's not going to be the rollout of electric vehicles that, brings the electrical grid of this country to a screeching halt. As humans, we are doing that on our own. But, we do need to make that investment. And this is about a lot of where that energy comes from. And that's another, criticism that electric cars get. It's like, well, it's still using fossil fuels because that's where we get our electricity from. Yes and no. As I've said, depends on where you are. In 2021, 61% of the electricity generation in the U.S. was indeed still from burning fossil fuels. Your coal, your natural gas, petroleum, other gases, burning stuff that we cannot replace. This is what we're trying to get away from. But 19% was from nuclear energy, like where I live. 20% was from renewable energy sources, and that's things like wind power, hydropower, biomass, which is things like literally burning waste, what they did in Back to the Future, burning wood, and also solar energy, and a little tiny bit from geothermal from the areas that have the benefit of geothermal power. So yes, we still get most of our electricity from fossil fuels, but this is changing. How much it will change, how rapidly it will change, will depend on how much support these industries get, especially from our government. And right now they have a lot of support, but that could change depending on what direction the political winds blow over the next several years. But the bottom line is we're going to continue to move forward. There may be resistance to moving forward, but we have to reduce our dependence on these non-renewable, not clean energy sources, these fossil fuels. We got to get away from them. So, as long as we continue to invest in the renewable technologies and we invest in up-leveling our current grid and how that electric grid works, we're not going to have any problem powering electric cars. It's everything else we also have to power. So are electric cars going to single-handedly destroy this country? No. That would be people. But electric cars, not even close. But we do have to continue to be smart about it. So let's just kind of look at some of the pros and cons of what we've talked about today. One of the benefits of electrified vehicles, many of them have a very quiet and smooth ride. The electric motor doesn't move as much. It doesn't have pistons going up and down and creating all this movement and vibration that, creates the feeling of driving. It's like you almost don't know it's even moving sometimes, which is kind of cool. So if you're looking for a smooth, quiet ride, electric is awesome. They're zero emissions, so they're environmentally friendly as long as we're getting away from getting the electricity from fossil fuels. Instant torque. I have mentioned this before, instant torque. And what that means is when you push on the pedal, which is no longer a gas pedal, it's the go pedal, it goes. Depends on how it's programmed, but whoosh, you can just accelerate like crazy. So you might have to factor in some speeding tickets in your cost to own. Maybe that's just me. But seriously, instant gratification. It's awesome. It makes it so easy to merge into traffic, to get on the freeway. It's really fun. But it does burn through electricity a little bit faster. Now, the cons is we currently have a more limited driving range. Even the Teslas that are the super extra long range still go maybe about the same, maybe a little less than you can go in a fuel-efficient, petrol-powered car. But they are getting better. We're getting more and more options every single year. And I promise the next episode we'll be talking about a lot of these different type of cars that are electrified. But right now, we still have a little bit more of a limited availability, both in terms of the makes and models, but also just in the ability to actually produce them. So you can actually get one of these things into your garage. If you live a place that has cold weather in the winter, might not be the best choice as your daily driver. And, occasionally it might spontaneously combust, but I wouldn't necessarily worry about that as a true, true con, but it can happen. So the bottom line is you just have to do the math. You really need to think about, does this suit my lifestyle? How much does it cost me for electricity to charge it? Where can I charge it? And how much driving do I do? Am I going to be able to consistently drive the distances I need to go before I run out of electricity? And then, truly am I willing to make that higher initial investment versus, continuing to just drive, a fuel efficient gas powered vehicle and drive it as fuel efficiently as possible? Those are decisions that you have to make, but I wanted you to just have the information to know that it's a lot of different variables that you need to consider to decide whether or not that is right for you. But honestly, the biggest one right now is, can you actually get one? Be prepared, probably at least a year. If you order a Tesla, if you're, try to order a Rivian, if you just try and get any of the electrified vehicles, don't even try to get a Ford Lightning. They're literally at a 5-year wait list right now, 5 years. So just scratch that one off for now. But that will change as our production capabilities, start hopefully moving back towards something that resembles normal. But my advice for most of the people that call me is wait. Just wait. Because we need to wait for the market to readjust. We need to wait for our production capabilities to come back up. And more options will become available over the next 2 to 5 years, especially if you live, in a non-California or non-New York tri-state area part of the country. There will be more cool vehicles to choose from. And hopefully we'll have a little bit more data on, which ones are good and which ones aren't. So overall, today, July 15th, 2022, my advice is wait. Most people just wait. Get a different vehicle for now, but potentially start putting it on your radar for your next vehicle purchase, because the demand for these cars is going up. We will see the supply go up, and we're going to see a lot more cool options. And hopefully we will continue to have better options to recharge these vehicles, to get the electricity that we need in a cheaper and cleaner way. So I hope this was helpful, and I promise next time we're going to go through the list of all the cool electric vehicles that are coming out that you probably won't be able to get yet, but at least it's good to know what is coming down the pipeline, because there's some that might be very unexpected. And we'll even talk about kind of the direction that some of the commercial vehicles are going. Like, imagine semis, 18-wheelers that are all electric. It's going to be super duper cool. So stay tuned. I promise I will get podcasts out more. In the meantime, whatever you drive it safely. I'm out of here.
The Straight Shift podcast is copyright LeeAnn Shattuck, the Car Chick, 2017. All views expressed by guest and or co-hosts are those of the guest and or co-hosts, and not necessarily those of LeeAnn Shattuck or the Car Chick.